Shalom, welcome to the Jewish Task Force, JTF. I'm Chaim ben Pesach, and we have with us again the great David ben Moshe. This is going to be a very important program because here we're going to be once again discussing the self-hating Jews that are working to destroy Israel, because it really increased this past week with Shmuck Schumer and with Kamala Harris's daughter-in-law and husband, all self-hating Jews, all the scum of the earth, and the things they do to destroy Israel, and how AIPAC backs them up and supports them. Wait till you see all of this. I mean, just unbelievable, these Jewish anti-Semites, these disgusting pigs. And of course, we know that David ben Moshe always has very interesting and fascinating things to speak about, very important topics as well. So this is going to be an important show. But before we begin, this show is dedicated to a refuah shlema, a complete recovery for Mark ben Sarah, Sharon Mitman, Shlomo ben Sarah, Dorit bat Sarah, Ruven ben Shoshana, and Ruth bat Sarah, and to Ilui Neshamot, elevating of the souls, for Malka bat Meir, Allegra bat Shlomo, Daniel Nankin, Victor Chazdai, Pesach Zeb, Ben Dov, Lunita Adler, Shifra Hoffman, Ruven Hoffman, Barry Hoffman, Arab Mir Kahana, Arab Binyamin Kahana, Tzipora Fegi Bat Liba, Yosef Ben Meir, Robert Mittman, Dennis Shore, Helen Friedman, and Charles Zolat. This past week, the self-hating Jew who is the Senate Majority Leader, what a disgrace, Senator from New York, Shmuck Schumer, made a speech in which he demanded that Israel hold new elections to replace Benjamin Netanyahu as prime minister. Now, I'm not a fan of Netanyahu's, but who is Shmuck Schumer, who lives in Brooklyn? Who is he to tell Israel what to do and when to hold elections? The gall, the chutzpah of this disgusting cockroach. The gall of him. And he's against Netanyahu. Netanyahu, by the way, is a wimp who is destroying Israel with his wimpy policies. And Shmuck Schumer thinks the wimpy policies are going too far. He wants Israel to commit suicide much faster. This vile, evil Jewish anti-Semite Shmuck Schumer always has been the worst traitor to the Jewish people, always supported the Iran nuclear deal to allow the Iranians to build nuclear bombs, now wants Israel to allow the Hamas terrorists to win, which would be the end of Israel. If that happens, Israel's finished. Israel's finished. And Shmuck Schumer would like to see that. This is the Shmuck Schumer who said the proudest moment of his life was when he went to the wedding of his daughter at a deformed temple where she married another woman. That was the proudest moment of his life.
Maybe if he was more of a man, his daughter would have turned out normal.
He is just beyond belief. And you know, AIPAC, of course, says he's very pro-Israel. Very pro-Israel. And yes, he has the voice. And his supporters have that voice. And the Orthodox Jews in Brooklyn, in Borough Park, he was their congressman, and they all voted for him, just like the Orthodox Jews in Borough Park now vote for Congressman Dan Goldman, another Jewish anti-Semite. We explained last week that Congressman Dan Goldman, is the one who pushed Biden and Blinken to initiate sanctions against Jewish heroes in Judea and Samaria. He's the one pushing to destroy Israel, Congressman Dan Goldman, and he has huge numbers of Orthodox Jews in his district, and they all vote for him. And all the Jewish establishment organizations, they're all part of this. And you know, the Jews will say, well, at least he's very pro-Israel, he's very good for Israel. And they claim that we cause anti-Semitism, that we Kahana's Jews cause anti-Semitism. Have you ever heard Shmuck Schumer speak? Have you ever heard him speak? Hello, my name is Shmuck Schumer, and I want new elections in Israel. Netanyahu is too right-wing for me. And, Donald Trump said this week that Jews who vote for the Democrats hate Israel and hate their religion. And that is true. Oh, that is so true. And Shmuck Schumer said, that's anti-Semitism. He claims we cause anti-Semitism. He goes on television every night defending open borders. We have to be humane. We have to be humane toward all of the people that want to come into the country because that's the moral thing to do. That's moral. Allowing tens of millions of people from the third world to come into the United States and destroy the United States. That's what he calls moral. Demanding that Israel commit national suicide and saying that what Israel is doing, he's against what Israel is doing in Gaza. These Nazi beasts in Gaza, what they did to the Jews. These beasts. And Shmuck Schumer says, what Israel's doing in Gaza is going too far. Going too far. Netanyahu, we got to get rid of him. He said Netanyahu's an obstacle to peace because we need a Palestinian terrorist state in Judea and Samaria. Netanyahu's an obstacle to peace. In other words, Israel should be in borders that are 6 to 9 miles wide, with the Arab terrorists 1 mile from the Israeli airport, where they can shoot down and will shoot down every Israeli plane trying to fly in and out of Israel. So Israel be paralyzed. The whole state of Israel will be like what we saw on the outskirts of Gaza on October 7th. That will happen to the whole state of Israel, day and night, all over Israel. You'll have another Holocaust, God forbid, if you listen to Shmuck Schumer. And all the time, and while he's lecturing Israel, this is how he speaks. And so do the people who support him. This is how they speak.
He's a stereotype for a weak man.
He is just beyond, and he's beyond cowardice. I mean, it's an insult to cowards to call him a coward. He is such a gutless worm. And, these gutless worm, self-hating Jews feel that when Jews are brave, that causes anti-Semitism. Don't be brave. Even when they're going to school, when they're kids, their hideous parents teach them, their hideous self-hating parents teach them, don't hit. Don't do this, don't do that. If they hit you, go to the teacher and rat on them. Don't fight back. Don't fight back. That's not nice.
Yeah, I am fighting back to the Jewish family is dishonorable.
Well, that's not Judaism, that's for sure. I mean, everything about them reeks of self-hatred. They're the opposite of everything the Torah and the Bible command us to be. We're supposed to be a holy nation and a nation of priests and a light unto the nations. And instead, we have, every time he speaks, anyone who watches him, what an image they get of the Jewish people when they see this creature speaking. And what goes through my mind every time I see him speak, I say to myself, what a schmuck. It really is. No, it really is. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And he raises hundreds of millions of dollars from Jews who think that, well, you have to support him after all. It's unbelievable. Why would anybody support groups like AIPAC and these other groups who raise money to support the self-hating Jewish politicians in Congress? Why would any Jew with an ounce of sanity support this when you could be supporting JTF and the Hilltop Youth, who are the proud Jews, the brave Jews? You remember what Senator Scoop Jackson said? Senator Scoop Jackson. You remember Senator Scoop Jackson?
Sure.
Okay. In 1972, when he announced his candidacy for president, he held a press conference in New York during the New York primary, and he invited the Jewish Defense League and Rabbi Meir Kahane to attend his press conference, which at that time, oh, the Shmuck Schumers of the world, oh, they twisted themselves into pretzels in order to condemn Rabbi Kahane. Oh, he's terrible. Oh, Senator Scoop Jackson was with his staff. There were about 20 of us from the JDL there. I was there. I was a 15-year-old kid, but I was there. And Rabbi Kahane was there, our great leader, our beloved Rabbi Meir Kahane, Zecher Tzaddik V'Kadosh Livracha, Hashem Yikom Damo. Our brave warrior rabbi was there, who was also a Talmudic genius and a strategic genius. And he was there, and one of Senator Jackson's aides, they were all Norwegians, because in Washington State, you had a lot of Norwegian immigrants at that time. But anyway, and now with the illegal immigration from the third world, you can imagine what the state looks like now. But anyway, at that time, Washington State and Oregon had a lot of Norwegians, just like Minnesota had a lot of Swedes, Wisconsin, Germans, Massachusetts, Irish, Connecticut and Rhode Island, Italians. You know, there's certain areas of the country where you had certain people settling. But anyway, he had a lot of Norwegians, and he was Norwegian, Senator Jackson, and his staff. And one of the guys on his staff, a guy in his 20s, said, why are your Jewish leaders fighting us? We're trying to get legislation passed that will compel the Soviets to allow the Jews to leave. Otherwise, there'll be no trade with the Soviets. It was called the Jackson-Vanik Amendment, eventually passed. But Jewish leaders were opposing it. The Jewish leaders, the Shmuck Schumer type leaders, were opposing it. No, you can't. You have to have peace with the Soviet Union. You can't do that. That's going to cause a Cold War. Then we'll have problems. I'm so afraid. I'm afraid. I don't want problems. I don't want a problem with the Soviet Union. And so Senator Jackson's staff, one of his staff members said, why are Jewish leaders doing it? Asked the JDL guys and Rabbi Kahane. And so we explained about the self-hating Jews and so on and so forth. And we tried our best to explain. They didn't understand it because, how can you understand it? How can you understand such mental defects like Bernie Sanders or Shmuck Schumer or Dan Goldman or Anthony Blinken? How can you understand these mental defects? And then he said, and then the staff member said to Senator Jackson, he said, Scoop, he called him Scoop. Scoop was his nickname. And he said, Scoop, can you imagine if all Jews were like Rabbi Kahane? And Senator Jackson, who was not only a prominent United States senator, but almost won the Democrat nomination for president in 1976. He came in second to Jimmy Carter. Senator Jackson, a very serious contender for the presidency, when his staff member said, can you imagine if all Jews were like Rabbi Kahane? Senator Jackson replied and said, and I quote, if all Jews were like Rabbi Kahane, I would be a Jew. What a statement. And the Jews, the self-hating Jews say, we cause anti-Semitism. I remember Senator Jesse Helms. Senator Jesse Helms hated the Jews. He said, I don't like them leftist Jews, what they've been doing. And, these Jewish liberals, they're always against me, no matter what I do. He was anti-Israel and anti-Jewish in the beginning. And we thought this guy's a problem. He's an anti-Semite. And someone arranged a meeting. So we JDL, we went down to Washington. We met him in his office. We met with a number of senators and congressmen, and he was one of the people we met with. And he was so impressed when he met the JDL people that he completely turned around and became the most pro-Israel senator you could have, saying, the Jews should not have to give up 1 inch of their land because the Bible says that this belongs to the Jewish people. He started making speeches like this on the Senate floor after he met the JDL. And I remember at that meeting, he said, you know, I don't like the Jews, but I have to support them because the Bible says I have to support them. And I said, Senator, sometimes I don't like the Jews, but I have to support them because the Bible says I have to support them. He loved that when I told him that. Anyway, we kept contact with him, and he became the most enthusiastic supporter of Israel because he understood what it said in the Bible. Shmuck Schumer wouldn't read the Bible. Shmuck Schumer is a demonic cockroach. With Shmuck Schumer, you think Shmuck Schumer knows what it says in the Bible? Rabbi Kahana said, we wrote the Bible so Baptists can read it. I mean, how many Jews even know what it says in the Bible? Anyway, and by the way, in the end, Senator Jesse Helms got me kosher food when I was starving in the prison system. I nearly died, and I was starving, and Senator Jesse Helms got me kosher food. The Jewish congressmen and the Jewish senators were nowhere to be found. They wouldn't help me. But Senator Jesse Helms threatened to hold up the budget of the whole BOP, the Bureau of Prisons, unless they gave me kosher food.
I remember you told a story back in the days of our show in Queens that Jesse Helms said, I think it was to you, that I don't understand the Jews. I support Israel. The Bible says I have to support Israel. So I am pro-Israel, and yet all the Jewish people send out to other states for money so that other people can run against me.
He didn't say all the Jewish people, because right-wing Jews were supporting him. The Jewish conservatives were supporting him at that point, and were giving him money too. So he wouldn't say all the Jews, but he was talking about the self-hating Jewish leftists,
which is a majority.
Well, in America, most Jews in America are not leftists or right. Most Jews in America just don't care. They're just apathetic. But the Jewish left, the people who run the Jewish establishment organizations, those are leftists. Those are leftists. I mean, they're terrible people. And, but he understood, we explained to him, and he understood that the Jews in Israel are right-wing. The Jews in Israel are not like American Jews. They're very right-wing. And he liked that. And he went to Israel and visited and saw that. He spoke with them. And he said, what a difference when he spoke to the Jews in Israel. He spoke to the soldiers. He spoke to the Jews living in Judea and Samaria. He spoke to all types of Jewish leaders there. He said, wow, what a difference. And Senator Jackson, Scoop Jackson, also saw that. He saw the Jews in Israel are not like the American Jews. When Senator Jackson ran for president, most of the Jews in America didn't want to support him. He was so pro-Israel, and instead they supported Jimmy Carter, the Nazi peanut farmer, that filthy pig. Anyway, bottom line is, I don't know how anybody can support Shmuck Schumer. I don't know how that's possible, but unfortunately it is, and he's not the only one. Ella Emhoff, 24 years old. She is Kamala Harris's stepdaughter. Kamala Harris, the mentally retarded, cackling hyena. That's how she all of a sudden she starts cackling in the middle for no reason. There's in the middle of giving an answer to something that has no connection to anything humorous, so she'll start going. I mean, just completely retarded. Completely retarded. She's the vice president. Anyway, she married Doug Emhoff, who is a Schumer-type self-hating Jew. She married him for his money because he's a wealthy businessman. And his daughter, Ella Emhoff, 24 years old, his daughter Ella Emhoff attends, you see those rallies where the demonstrators support Hamas and call for the destruction of Israel? She attends those rallies and funds them. She raised $8 million for the Gaza Nazi terrorists since October 7th. And now she's raising money. Now she's decided that that's not good. That's not the only thing. She wants to now raise money for UNRWA. UNRWA is the United Nations organization in Gaza. And all the UNRWA members are members of Hamas. All of them are part of Hamas. The United Nations employees in Gaza are part of Hamas. United Nations employees in Gaza. And there's tremendous evidence of this. Pictures were taken. There's evidence from witnesses. The UN employees in Gaza participated in the massacre of Jews on October 7th. They participated in the Nazi pogrom where they cut the heads off of Jewish babies in front of their parents. They burned Jewish babies alive in front of their parents. They raped Jewish women in front of their husbands. While their husbands were tied up and being tortured, they raped Jewish women. They grabbed Jewish women, pulled all their clothes off, and paraded them naked through the streets of Gaza, while everybody spit on them and threw rocks and dirt on them. And they were raping them as well. While this was happening, they were also raping them. And when this took place, the UN employees in UNRWA were participating in this because they're all Hamas terrorists themselves. The UN employees are all Arab, Muslim terrorists. That's who the UN employs. And the UN is in charge of the so-called education system in Gaza. They're the ones that fund and run the education system, where Gazans are taught mathematics is if there are 10 Jews and we murder 5 of the Jews, how many Jews are left? That's how they teach subtraction. And now Ella Emhoff, she was so impressed when she heard all of this, she's decided now to raise money also for UNRWA. She thinks that this is a great organization now because anybody who murders Jews and wants to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, that's who Ella Emhoff wants to support. This is the daughter-in-law of Kamala Harris, who will probably be president of the United States if the senile Joe Biden, God forbid, wins the election. If, God forbid, Joe Biden wins this election in November, Kamala Harris will probably become president because I don't think Joe Biden can survive a whole 5 years in office. He has this whole year ahead, this whole election year ahead of him, plus the 4-year term that begins on January 20th of next year, a whole 4-year term. He'd have to survive in office 5 years. I mean, he is deteriorating by the minute.
His wife has to run up on stage and guide him off. At the last speech, he stopped to talk to people on the way out, and she ran up to get him because he was heading in the wrong direction.
He goes like this. Did you ever see he goes like this? He's lost when he's on stage. He's lost. He doesn't know what to do. He's lost. It's just, and no matter how much they feed him his lines, he messes everything up. But anyway, regardless of his senility, Kamala Harris, she's going to become president. The cackling hyena, the Nazi cackling hyena, and she's a Nazi, by the way. She condemns Israel. She's been condemning Israel and making speeches against Israel. She's completely in the pocket of Hamas and all the Muslim Nazis. She supports them 100%. And she will become president. If Joe Biden is reelected, probably become president. It doesn't make a difference because Joe Biden is anti-Israel and anti-Semitic as well. His policies are so anti-Israel and so poisonous that I shudder to think what will happen. Of course, if we had Kahanish Jews or Hilltop Youth in charge of Israel, I wouldn't worry about it because they wouldn't, because they, no matter what pressure is put on them, they wouldn't give in to the pressure and they would defy the pressure and they would win because God would bless Israel tremendously if they were in charge. They would bring the final redemption if they were in charge. But with the pathetic, wimpy leaders we have, like Netanyahu, with these pathetic leaders that we have, the danger is the enormous danger here. Biden says as soon as the war in Gaza is over that Israel has to create a so-called Palestinian terrorist state. There is no Palestinians. There are no Palestinians and there is no Palestine. All a lie. But they want to create a so-called Palestinian terrorist state. In other words, they want to rob Israel of her biblical heartland and make Israel completely indefensible. Even Abba Eban, who was an extreme left-wing foreign minister of Israel, he was too left-wing even for the Socialist Labor Party. Even this extreme leftist Abba Eban said that the pre-1967 lines, which is what Israel would go to if there was a Palestinian state, Israel would be in the pre-1967 lines. Even Abba Eban said they're Auschwitz lines, suicide lines. And Golda Meir, another socialist, even she said that any Jew who supports a plan like that would have to be a traitor. Well, here are the traitors that are supporting it. I mean, how hideous. The best thing you can do if you care about Israel and love Israel is support the Hilltop Youth, and the only organization supporting them and financing them outside of Israel is JTF. Here's how you help the Hilltop Youth to save Israel from these hideous, self-hating scum, Jews and righteous Gentiles who want to help Israel. They go to our Hebrew main page, hayamin.org, and they click on the donate button. The page is in Hebrew, but the donate button on top is in English. Big donate button, very simple. Just click on it, and you can very simply and quickly support the heroic Hilltop Youth. That's if you want to do it online. If you'd rather send checks and money orders through the regular mail, instead, you send checks and money orders made out to JTF, and you send it to our post office box, JTF PO Box 650327, Fresh Meadows, New York 11365. When are Jews going to finally give a break to the good Jews that are trying to make a difference? When is JTF going to get the resources it needs to really take on these self-hating Jews? Now, we're helping the Hilltop Youth tremendously. By the way, it's been a little bit over 3 years since JTF devotes all of its budget and all of its resources and everything else to the Hilltop Youth. And in that time, despite the fact that they destroyed many of the Hilltop Youth communities, there are far more Hilltop Youth and far more Hilltop Youth communities than there were when we started. Even though the Israeli government comes and tries to bulldoze them, they keep coming back, and there are far more than there were before. And in fact, there have been reports on this in recent days, again, reports about how they've been expanding and growing, and Baruch Hashem, thank God. Without JTF, I don't know what they would do. But you can make a difference now. You can make a difference and help these Jewish heroes and really help Israel. And remember, I will bless them that bless Israel. If you want to be blessed, that's the way to get the true blessing. If not in this world, then definitely in the next. And maybe in this world as well. But you shouldn't do it for the blessing. You should do it because it's a good cause. You shouldn't do it for your own selfish reasons. You should do it for a good cause, because because these are the ultimate idealists, and because it is so important that the Hilltop Youth defeat the Shmuck Schumers and the Ella Emhoffs of the world and the Dan Goldmans of the world. It is absolutely essential that we do this. This is a battle for morality and truth and justice, and Jews and righteous Gentiles should and must be part of this battle. If we win this battle, Israel will emerge triumphant, and that will lead to the final redemption. If we lose this battle, God forbid, the whole world is in terrible, terrible danger. David?
Well, I wanted to start with something I was talking about last week, which I left out because I just put a general headline in there and I don't put all the points. I was talking about the Motion Picture Code of 1934. Two important things I left out. Well, one of them is very important. Two things I left out was the bad guy must always die at the end. Even if he has redemption and turns around and he saves the hero, he still takes the bullet and has to die at the end. And the other thing is all non-whites must be simpletons. Doesn't matter if they're Asian or Black or Hispanic. They must be simpletons or evil. So
that was written into the code?
It was written into the code. They must be evil, like Japanese spies would be evil. But if not, they had to have the stereotype, the big buck teeth and the thick glasses, and not overly bright. And of course, you saw what they did to blacks with Stephen Fetchit and Willie Best and Snowflake. They had to be simpletons, barely able to speak. Now, if a white person played, say, a Chinese, like Charlie Chan, then he could be smart. But if you had a Chinese playing a Chinese character, you had to be evil or a simpleton. And that was written in. That was all part of the code. I wanted to talk about what it was like when I was a kid. When my grandparents were alive, they lived in Brooklyn, Borough Park, a very Jewish area. And my mother would take me down on the bus. We'd get on the bus to Main Street, Flushing, because we lived in Flushing. And from there, you'd get into the number 7 today. Back then, I guess it was called the Flushing Line, which was an IRT train. I don't know if you ever noticed, but the IRTs were narrower trains than the others, running on narrow gauge tracks. Whereas the other 2 lines, the Independent IND and the BMT, Brooklyn Manhattan Transit, run on standard gauge train tracks. I'm just throwing that in. But in those days, the trains were all dark olive green. The seats were like wicker. And there was a few handles instead of bars, handles that would sway. And there were some bars in the middle, but no bars running across the seats where a lot of people could grab on. And the trains smelled like electricity, those old trains, a toss-up between oil and electricity. And you get on that train, and to get to Borough Park, Brooklyn, after the Flushing Line, we had to take 2 more trains. So it was over an hour altogether. And we'd visit my grandmother, and my father would usually be in Brooklyn that day, and that's why we went. And he'd pick us up and drove us all back home. But if it was a day he wasn't in Brooklyn, we had to take those trains home. So at around 8 o'clock, we get on those trains. It was after rush hour, so the trains were pretty empty. We get on and take all those trains home. If we were a little tired, when we got to Flushing, we would take a taxi, which would cost us 75 cents from door to door. Otherwise, we'd get on the bus. But the point I want to make is there were no National Guardsmen in the subways, or in those days, a lot of the trains were elevated. There were no police. You didn't see transit police. You didn't see anything. You saw a bunch of people who respected each other and respected each other's distance. If somebody was sitting on a seat over here, you would sit over here. And that's how it was. And it was safe. Here was a woman alone with her little boy son riding the subways at night, and nobody gave it another thought. So how did we go from that to requiring the National Guard to be put in the subway stations, because not only are passengers being attacked, but even conductors were being attacked? What caused that?
I don't think people know. I don't know if everybody knows that about the National Guard. Maybe you should explain what happened recently.
Crime is up so much because of so many major cities with their cries for defund the police, defund the police. And the district attorney in New York, when a a person commits a crime, he lets them out, no bail. It's bail-free crime. So you're back on the street in a few hours to commit your crimes again. And some senators and state senators and some congresswomen, all black, have stated that stopping black crime is racist. I didn't know we noticed color. I thought that we're judging everybody by their character. If stopping crime of any type is racist, then why stop any crime at all? Let's just have a society of anarchy where you can do as you please at any time and harm anyone you want at any time. But calling stopping black crime racist is, I don't know what you'd call it, but
it's racist. That's
it
what
is,
I
because
call
you're
it.
pointing at a single race and you're saying this one particular race should be able to commit all the crime they want. Blacks weren't like this when I was a little boy. We used to go to Coney Island, which was turning more and more black, and it was safe. Blacks had respect for whites. Whites had respect for blacks. A friend of mine at the gym, another Jewish guy who's very conservative, he used to go to this blues place in Chicago where he was brought up and where he worked. And it was all black. And when he poked his nose in, they'd say, come on in and listen to the music. And he's older than me, so this is going even back a little bit more. And that's how blacks and whites got along until the government got involved. Did you know that we were getting integration naturally in the late 30s with swing music? But then the war came and things changed. We were getting natural integration again in the 50s with the rhythm and blues, which became rock and roll. It was originally rhythm and blues. The government got involved. When the government touches anything, it falls apart. They create a mess. They can't do anything right. So today we have this racial hatred. Everybody fears everybody who doesn't look, talk, and have the same culture as them. And I don't know who's driving the blacks. This is beyond Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, but so many of them blame whites for all their problems. They never look inward. And I wish we could go back to the days where in the 1920s, whites used to go up to Harlem, to the Cotton Club, to the Savoy, and listen to black music. You can't get near that today. And it's you and the government that did this. You screw up everything you touch. Here's another screw up. It happened in Flushing, which I mentioned, that's where I used to live. Squatters' rights. This woman inherited this house from her family, not her direct family, an indirect family, like an aunt or maybe a cousin, but she got this house in Flushing and it was abandoned for a while. So she went in to open the door and there's squatters in there. So she calls the police and the police take the two squatters out, but then they say they're renting from another guy who is in charge of the house. So she closes the door and she's being interviewed by ABC News and she won't come out. She says, if I come out, they're going to take the house again. But the guy who was renting it comes and kicks the door in. And so she calls the police again. And this time she's saying, this is my house. She has the documents with her. She has the deed with her. She inherited. And that house now, the estimate is it's worth about $1 million. It's 2-story. It's in pretty good shape. A lot of her stuff is in the house, but so is a lot of drug paraphernalia that the squatters had. And they didn't throw garbage out. They just left garbage all over. The police came and they took the squatter out and arrested him. And they took her out and arrested her. The last you saw in the scene was she was leaving the house in handcuffs. This is her house. If someone steals your property and you grab it back, that's not theft. That's your property that you're getting back. Here she wanted this house so she could sell it, because I'm sure she could use the money, and they won't let her. The law is if you're in that house over 30 days, you have a right to stay in that house. And when you take all this to court, it's dragged out and they drag it out, and 2 years can go by. Do you know how much you're going to have to pay in legal fees? So what you usually do is you pay the squatters to get out, maybe 10,000, 20,000. The announcer said it could be as high as 40,000. But if she sells the house, she'll get $1 million or maybe a little bit more. This is the insanity of New York, and there's other places that are just like it. Boy, am I glad I don't live there anymore. Now, I live in Arizona, where it's insane, but it's not as insane as the North, or it's not as insane as California, which is why you don't see Arizonans moving to California, but you see Californians moving to Arizona. And my property value went up because of them demanding homes here. My property value went up was 281 when we bought the house here, which was more than twice the house I had in New York, on more than twice the land. And of course, it was a modern house with central air. I used to have window units, and even has an underground sprinkling system and full insulation. It's everything you could want in a house. And that 281 is now worth about 725 because of all the Californians fleeing. And this happened, it was worth about 385 a few years ago, but when they started fleeing California, the price just shot up and kept going up. But there's a gym here. I go to one of them. Not this gym, not in Arizona, but somewhere. It's a chain. I think maybe across the whole country. I don't know. It's called Planet Fitness, and it's owned by leftists. And there was a man shaving who didn't look like a woman. He looked purely like a man. There was nothing feminine about him. He wasn't taking any drugs to do a transfer to change his hormones. He had a beard, and he was shaving it off in the woman's locker room. So one of the women complained, and the front desk told her they were revoking her membership. They kept the guy shaving. That was okay in the woman's locker room, but they threw her out for complaining about it. How would you feel if you were a woman and a man who's not even in the middle of transitioning, he identifies as a woman? Well, how would you feel if a man came into the locker room? How would you feel changing? There was a 12-year-old girl there who quickly covered herself up with towels. Well, I identify as the Chinese table tennis world's champion. I'm not, but I identify as it. And here we are in the land of the free, and Ashadina had to have some major dental work. She had a root canal, 35 years old, and it got infected. And so she started taking antibiotics, and they had no effect at all, and the infection got worse. So the dentist put her on a totally different one that she hasn't had for 14 years. Now, she had to be sedated for the actual appointment where he's going to do the work. That tooth had to come out, and he had to grind down the two teeth on either side to make a bridge. But she had to be put out, not with an intravenous. It's more like the Twilight. You take Trazolam, something like that, and it puts you in the twilight. You're out, but if they call your name, you wake up for a few seconds and you can talk to them. It's like being in the Twilight Zone. Well, he can only give her two because he just bought the practice from our old dentist, and he doesn't have the permit yet to give two more like my old dentist used to. So she woke up in the middle of the procedure. Of course, by that time she was numb and a lot of the work was done, but she never woke up before. And when I asked him, how come you didn't give her two more? He's not allowed to. He just bought the practice, and he has to apply for all the right permits, and that takes time. Isn't this the land of the free? Now, here's a guy who not only graduated dental school, but he was an associate dentist in another practice, so he's a licensed dentist. Why do you need a license? You got your diploma that says you graduated. You did your residency. You have that paper. But the state has to get involved because they want money. My old dentist told me that every 3 years he has to pay $800 to renew his permit to write prescriptions. Why? Because the state wants the money or the town wants the money. You're not free in this country, not even close to being free. You need a permit or a license to do anything. You can't even go fishing. You need I guess it's a fishing license. You can't even own a dog. You need a dog license. You want to get married? The state gets involved. You have to have a marriage license. Do the Hasidic Jews, do they get state marriage license, or is there strictly 100% religious ceremony?
The ceremony is religious, but everybody has to go through the city. It's actually the city. You have to go through the local municipality. Remember they used to say you get married at City Hall? Remember they used to say that?
Yes.
Everybody has to get a regular marriage license from the government. Otherwise, it's not recognized as marriage. The ceremony, though, the actual ceremony is religious, of course, but they have to get that license from the government.
Yeah, but the ceremony should be enough. You're getting married by somebody who can pronounce you man and wife. It's a religious ceremony. Why is the state involved?
I agree.
Massachusetts, Governor Healy, it's a woman governor.
A lesbian, by the way.
Yes, and there was a rape there, and she's catching all kinds of flack for saying, well, things happen. And Tyson Foods, they're leaving a town of 8,000 in Iowa. They fired all 1,200 workers, and the town thrived because of Tyson Foods. Now that town is going to starve because of it, and people will be leaving. Tyson is opening up a big plant. I believe it's in Tennessee, and they're going to hire illegal aliens, as many as 42,000. You might call them criminal aliens. That's maybe even more descriptive. They're hiring 42,000 criminal aliens after firing 1,200 Americans because they want a diverse workforce.
That's very diverse, yeah.
What about America? What about Americans? You fire, actually, those 1,200 probably bought almost everything by Tyson. I don't even know, I've never had a Tyson anything in my life, and I certainly won't now, but I don't even know what they make. I think it's chicken. I don't know what else.
Well, maybe you should. Our Jewish the Jewish people watching the show should not buy it because it's not kosher.
And the Christian people should not buy it either because of what Tyson just did. If we could boycott Bud Light and boycott Target, I hope you're still doing it. I'm still boycotting Land O'Lakes butter because they took the Indian princess off. Maybe you remember the Howdy Doody show, Princess Summer, Fall, Winter, Spring. They took her off. I won't buy, even if it's on sale and it's a great sale, I won't buy Land O'Lakes butter, Land O'Lakes anything.
You shouldn't buy butter. Butter is also very unhealthy.
Well, I don't, my diet is everything terrible. Everything I eat is unhealthy, but my body's used to it. I wouldn't recommend my diet for anyone else. Memphis, Tennessee, so far has had 4,200 car thefts this year.
What a surprise.
And Tyree Nichols was beaten to death by police officers. And a state representative is calling for Black Lives Matter to riot.
Oh, okay. That's legal to urge people to riot now.
Well, I guess if you're in the government and you've got a D next to your name, you can do anything and get away with it.
There are other things, but I'm not going to say what. But there are other things that if you come from a particular group, you can also do anything and get away with it. Certain particular groups. I'm not going to say which, because I'm very politically correct. But there's certain groups that can say anything and do anything and have a license. They have a license to murder. They could do anything they want. License to steal, license to murder. There are people like that in our society, unfortunately.
Well, the standards have been lowered. The police aren't always white. Black police beat up the suspect too. If the suspect is fighting and kicking and screaming. In the old days, if you had someone like that, Officer Clancy on his beat would come over with his nightstick and bop you on the head until you did what you were told to do by him. You can't do that anymore. They don't even carry a nightstick anymore. What are you supposed to do? Like Moe on the Three Stooges, poke his eyes out like that? Well, it takes a few to subdue one of these people now, and they're not all white against the black victim.
You mean the police?
Against the black perpetrator.
You mean the police are not all
right? They're all, police support each other. They're all color blue. And the thing is, to get more non-whites on the police force and women, they lowered standards to ridiculous lengths. So even when you get somebody who was, in the old days, would have been rejected because he was white and maybe too short, or white and not a very good candidate on his test, someone who was maybe brutal and had a slight police record when he was younger, because of the lower standards, you're getting people like that too. So the good police have to watch out for the bad police. And if there's a few bad police doing something to a perpetrator, the good cop has to look away. He may say something, but he has to look away. Otherwise, they'll turn on him. And I just have two more things. I was once willing to give my life for what my country stood for. Now I'm willing to give my life to protect my family from what this country has become. And for all you morons out there asking for Father's and Mother's Day to be changed to Special Persons Day, we already have a special day for you. It's called April Fool's Day.
Yeah, well, the governor of, well, I'm not even going to go into it. I was going to go into something, the governor of Michigan, she refused to use the word woman. You're not allowed to say woman anymore. Man or woman, you can't say man or woman anymore, because now they're binary and you're not allowed. She refused to say it.
No, non-binary. Binary means you're one sex or the other.
Oh, non-binary. Okay, whatever. Well, whatever.
It's funny though.
She refused to say it. She refused to. They could not get her to use the word woman. She would not use the word woman. Interesting. By the way, the National Organization for Women, I don't know what are they going to do now. What do they do in a situation like that? I guess they got to change their name to the National Organization for Non-Binaries, I guess. But anyway, whatever.
It's funny though, when you find a dinosaur skeleton, you quickly identify it as it was either male or female. There's no non-binary dinosaurs. There's no non-binary mammals. If a lioness is giving birth, it's not the male lion with the mane giving birth. It's the lion. It's the female lion. There's no in between. You're either a male lion or a female lion.
The world is sick and getting sicker. Anyway, in your heart, you know we're right. And in your guts, you know they're nuts. Let's get active. Let's do things to make this a better world. We can do it through JTF. We can do it by supporting the Hilltop Youth. That's something very important that we can do. Let's get active and let's make a difference, because if we don't, the terrible consequences are all around us. We can see it's self-apparent what happens when people are apathetic in the face of evil. For JTF, until next week, this is Chaim ben Pesach, and for David ben Moshe, Shalom.